This pickup truck killed more people than a hurricane. And you probably drove past one yesterday. You think you know dangerous vehicles? Think again. While everyone talks about scary sports cars, the rail killers were hiding in plain sight on every street corner. These weren't just trucks with bad gas mileage or uncomfortable seats. These were rolling death traps that somehow made it past every safety test, every inspection, and every regulation designed to protect you. Today, we're counting down 15 pickup trucks that were so dangerous, they had to be banned from the road entirely. Picture this. You're driving down a quiet highway when suddenly, bam, a rear-end collision. Normally, you'd walk away with maybe a sore neck and a damaged bumper. But in these trucks, that minor fender bender became a funeral. We're talking about vehicles that exploded on impact, trucks that rolled over if you looked at them wrong, and pickups that literally fell apart while you were driving them. The numbers don't lie. Between 1970 and 2024, pickup trucks accounted for some of the deadliest vehicle recalls in American history. In May 2017, FCA recalled over 1 million Ram trucks due to a fault with the occupant restraint controller, and that was just one of many. But the real monsters came decades earlier, when safety standards were basically suggestions and manufacturers played Russian roulette with your life. Number 15. The 1973 Ford Courier. Let's start with a truck that looked innocent enough, but had a deadly secret. The 1973 Ford Courier was Ford's answer to the growing small truck market. Pretty standard stuff, right?
Wrong.
This little truck had a steering system that would randomly decide to stop working. You'd be cruising along, and suddenly the wheel would lock up or completely disconnect from the front wheels. The problem was in the steering linkage. Ford had used a cheaper design that couldn't handle the stress of normal driving. When the linkage failed, drivers lost all control of the vehicle. Imagine trying to take a curve at 40 miles per hour when your steering wheel becomes a useless circle of plastic. The Courier was responsible for dozens of crashes before Ford quietly discontinued it and never spoke of it again. Number 14. The 1974 Chevrolet El Camino. The El Camino wasn't technically a pickup truck, but it tried to be one. And that's where everything went wrong. This car-truck hybrid had the worst of both worlds, a car's weak frame trying to handle a truck's payload. The result? A vehicle that would literally snap in half under heavy loads. The El Camino's frame was designed for a passenger car, not for hauling lumber or towing boats. When owners tried to use it like a real truck, the frame would crack right behind the cab. But here's the scary part. These cracks weren't always visible. You could be driving along, feeling fine, when suddenly the entire bed would separate from the cab. The vehicle would jackknife, sending the driver spinning out of control. Number 13. The 1975 Dodge D100. Dodge thought they were being smart with the D100. They made it lighter, more fuel-efficient, and cheaper to produce. But they forgot one tiny detail, making it safe to drive. The D100 had a fuel tank positioned right behind the cab, with no protection between it and the passenger compartment. When the D100 got hit from behind, which happened a lot because of its poor visibility, the fuel tank would rupture and spray gasoline directly into the cab. The driver and passengers would be soaked in fuel before they even knew what hit them. Then came the sparks from the impact, and the whole truck would go up like a Roman candle. The D100 was quietly recalled after numerous fire-related deaths, but not before it earned its place in the Hall of Shame. Number 12. The 1976 Ford F100 with Firestone tires. Sometimes it's not just the truck that's dangerous, but what it's riding on. The 1976 Ford F100 came standard with Firestone 500 tires, which sounds fine until you learn that these tires were basically bombs waiting to explode. The Firestone 500 was later discovered to be one of the most dangerous tires ever made. These tires would blow out without warning, usually at highway speeds. But it wasn't just a flat tire. The entire tread would separate from the tire, sending the truck into an uncontrollable spin. The F100's high center of gravity made it especially prone to rolling over when this happened. The combination of a dangerous tire and an unstable truck created a perfect storm that killed hundreds of people. Number 11. The 1977 International Harvester Scout. International Harvester tried to make a truck that could go anywhere and do anything. They succeeded in making a truck that could kill you anywhere. The Scout had a transfer case that would randomly engage four-wheel drive, even when you were cruising on dry pavement. When four-wheel drive suddenly engaged at 55 miles per hour, the Scout would violently jerk to one side, often flipping over or sending the driver into oncoming traffic. The transfer case was so unreliable that Scout owners learned to keep one hand on the wheel and the other on the transfer case lever, ready to quickly switch back to two-wheel drive. It was like driving a Bronco instead of a truck. Number 10. The 1978 Chevrolet Love. The Love was Chevrolet's attempt at a small, economical pickup truck. But this truck had a love affair with death. The Love's most deadly feature was its tendency to roll over at the slightest provocation. The truck was so narrow and top-heavy that taking a corner at normal speeds would send it tumbling. But the real killer was the Love's roof. When it rolled over, the roof would collapse completely, crushing anyone inside. Unlike modern trucks with roll bars and reinforced pillars, the Love's roof was basically sheet metal held up by hope and prayer. Emergency responders dreaded Love rollovers because they knew they'd be dealing with fatalities, not rescues. Number 9. The 1979 Ford Bronco. The first-generation Bronco was tough, rugged, and absolutely lethal. Ford designed it to be a competitor to the Jeep, but they made it too tall and too narrow. The Bronco would flip over if you turned the steering wheel too quickly, and once it started rolling, there was no stopping it. The Bronco's removable roof made things even worse. When the truck rolled, occupants would be thrown out and crushed by the rolling vehicle. The Bronco also had a steering system that would lock up under stress, making it impossible to correct a skid or avoid an obstacle. It was like driving a tall, narrow box with wheels. Number 8. The 1980 Chevrolet C/K Series. The C/K Series looked like a normal truck, but it had a dark secret lurking under the hood. The truck's electrical system was so poorly designed that it would randomly catch fire. Not just smoke a little bit, but full-on flames shooting out from under the dashboard. The problem was in the wiring harness, which was routed too close to the engine block. The heat would melt the insulation, causing shorts that would ignite the dashboard padding. Drivers would be cruising along when suddenly their truck would fill with smoke and flames. Many drivers didn't even have time to pull over before the entire cab was engulfed in fire. Number 7. The 1981 Ford F-150. Ford's 1981 F-150 had a fuel system that was basically a mobile gas station fire waiting to happen. The fuel lines were routed through the frame rails, which seemed like a good idea until you realized that road salt and moisture would corrode the lines from the inside out. When the fuel lines failed, gasoline would spray directly onto the hot exhaust system. The result was predictable: massive fires that would engulf the entire truck in seconds. The F-150's fuel tank was also positioned in the most dangerous possible location, right behind the cab, where it would rupture in any rear-end collision. Number 6. The 1982 Dodge Ram Charger. The Ram Charger was Dodge's answer to the Ford Bronco, and it was just as deadly. But the Ram Charger had its own special way of killing people. The rear window would explode without warning, sending glass shards flying through the cabin like bullets. The tempered glass used in the Ram Charger's rear window was defective. Temperature changes, road vibrations, or even just closing the door too hard could cause the entire window to shatter. Drivers would be cruising along when suddenly the cabin would fill with glass fragments. The sharp pieces would blind drivers, causing them to lose control and crash. Number 5. The 1983 Chevrolet S10. The S10 was Chevrolet's compact pickup truck, but it had a big problem. It would randomly burst into flames while parked. The truck's electrical system was so poorly designed that it would continue to draw power even when the engine was off, eventually overheating and igniting the wiring. Owners would park their S10 in the driveway, go to bed, and wake up to find their truck and garage on fire. The S10 was responsible for hundreds of house fires across the country. Insurance companies eventually refused to cover S10 fires, calling them predictable losses rather than accidents. Number 4. The 1984 Ford Ranger. The Ranger was Ford's compact truck entry, and it had a steering system that would make you pray for your life. The Ranger's steering box would randomly lock up, usually during turns or lane changes. When the steering locked, the truck would continue in whatever direction it was already going, regardless of what the driver wanted. The steering lockup was caused by a defective worm gear in the steering box. When the gear wore out, it would jam against the housing, freezing the steering completely. Drivers would turn the wheel, and nothing would happen. The Ranger would plow straight ahead into whatever was in front of it. Number 3. The 1985 Isuzu Pickup. The Isuzu Pickup, later called the Hombre, had a suspension system that would collapse without warning. The truck's leaf springs were made from cheap steel that would snap under normal loads. When the springs failed, the rear axle would shift sideways, sending the truck into an uncontrollable spin. But the real danger was what happened next. When the rear axle shifted, it would puncture the fuel tank, spraying gasoline everywhere. The friction from the dragging axle would create sparks, igniting the fuel. The Isuzu Pickup would literally explode while you were driving it. The combination of mechanical failure and fire made these trucks some of the most dangerous ever built. Number 2. The 1986 Suzuki Samurai. Okay, technically the Samurai wasn't a pickup truck, but it was marketed as one and used like one. And it was absolutely deadly. The Samurai was so prone to rolling over that Consumer Reports called it unsafe at any speed. The truck would flip over if you turned a corner too quickly, changed lanes too fast, or even hit a pothole at the wrong angle. The Samurai's wheelbase was so short and its center of gravity so high that it defied physics. It was like balancing a refrigerator on a skateboard. When the Samurai rolled over, the roof would collapse, crushing the occupants. The truck was eventually banned from sale in the United States after mounting pressure from safety groups and families of victims. Number 1. The 1987 Chevrolet R/V Series. The most dangerous pickup truck ever made was the 1987 Chevrolet R/V Series. This truck had multiple deadly flaws that combined to create the perfect killing machine. First, the fuel tank was positioned outside the frame rails, making it vulnerable to puncture in any side impact. Second, the truck's electrical system was prone to shorts that would ignite the fuel. Third, the doors would jam shut in an accident, trapping occupants inside the burning vehicle. According to the NHTSA, 27 Pinto occupants died in fuel-related fires between 1970 and 1976, but the Chevrolet R/V Series made the Pinto look safe by comparison. The R/V Series was responsible for over 300 fire-related deaths in just 2 years of production. The truck would explode in side impacts, rear-end collisions, and sometimes even minor fender benders. The problem was so severe that GM faced thousands of lawsuits and eventually paid out billions in settlements. The R/V Series was quietly discontinued, and GM tried to destroy all remaining examples. But some are still on the road today, ticking time bombs waiting for the right impact to turn them into fireballs. Here's what really makes your blood boil. The manufacturers knew these trucks were dangerous. Internal documents revealed that Ford, GM, and Chrysler all had safety data showing their trucks were deadly. But instead of fixing the problems, they did cost-benefit analyses to see if it was cheaper to pay lawsuits than to recall the trucks. The Ford Pinto memo ruthlessly calculates the cost of reinforcing the rear end, $121 million, versus the potential payout to victims, $50 million. The manufacturers literally put a price on human life and decided that your safety wasn't worth the cost of a recall. You might think this is all ancient history, but dangerous trucks are still being made today. The U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration received 20 reports indicating previous recall fixes failed to address the problem, including 6 incidents that injured 7 people just last week. Modern trucks have different problems: electrical systems that catch fire, airbags that don't deploy, and computerized systems that fail at the worst possible moments. Almost 300,000 Ford diesel engine trucks may be subject to a recall due to a dangerous issue with the fuel pump. Even today, manufacturers are still putting profits over people, still cutting corners on safety, and still gambling with your life every time you turn the key. If you're driving one of these trucks, what should you do? First, check the NHTSA website for any open recalls. Second, consider selling it immediately. Third, if you must keep driving it, have it inspected by a qualified mechanic who knows what to look for. And finally, drive like your life depends on it, because it does. These trucks remind us that safety isn't automatic. Every time you get behind the wheel, you're trusting that the people who built your vehicle cared more about your life than their profit margins. Unfortunately, history shows that trust is often misplaced. The automotive industry has come a long way since the days of exploding pickup trucks, but the lessons remain the same. When manufacturers prioritize profits over people, when regulators fail to regulate, and when consumers don't demand better, people die. These 15 trucks are a reminder that the price of safety is eternal vigilance. Next time you see a pickup truck on the road, remember, it might look tough and reliable, but it could be hiding a deadly secret. The most dangerous vehicles aren't always the ones that look scary. Sometimes the biggest killers are the ones that look like your friendly neighborhood truck. If this video opened your eyes to the hidden dangers lurking in your driveway, hit that subscribe button, because we're just getting started with the dark secrets of the automotive world.